At 6:40 hours, somewhere in the blue haze of the Arabian Sea, radar screens lit up. U.S. warships were steering closer to Iran. The Navy is inching closer to Iran. But is this a show of power or the calm before the storm? Rising tensions, secret strategies, and shifting alliances. Today we uncover what's really happening as U.S. forces move toward Iran. The sound of engines hums low across the Persian Gulf beneath the calm surface. Satellites trace the steady path of American destroyers cutting east. Each movement is recorded, analyzed, and broadcast through the region's nervous airwaves. This isn't the first time the United States has drawn near Iran's shores, but the precision of this deployment feels different. Quieter, colder, and far more deliberate. Reports confirm the USS Bataan amphibious ready group has entered striking range, accompanied by surveillance aircraft circling the Strait of Hormuz. The world's narrowest oil artery carrier strike groups have been spotted near Bahrain and the Gulf of Oman, their decks glinting in the desert sun. In Washington, officials insist these maneuvers are routine, meant to ensure freedom of navigation. Yet every sailor aboard knows what lies beyond that phrase: the possibility that a single misread radar echo could ignite a global crisis. Behind this choreography lies a wider ambition. After years of focusing on Ukraine and the Indo-Pacific, the U.S. is returning to the Middle East waters, not to conquer, but to remind the world who still owns the horizon. And as the ships move closer, so does the danger of accident, provocation, or design. In this ocean, every signal matters. Every silence speaks. To understand today's escalation, one must return to 2018, the year Washington tore up the nuclear agreement that once tethered Iran to the diplomatic table. Donald Trump called it the worst deal ever negotiated. For Tehran, it was a signal that compromise had died. Thus began the maximum pressure campaign. Sanctions stacked upon sanctions, oil exports crushed, and the Iranian rial collapsing. But pressure wasn't just economic. Cyber operations struck nuclear facilities. Covert networks targeted scientists, ports, and communication lines. Each move was calculated not to start a war, but to keep one permanently breathing. Trump's doctrine reshaped alliances. Israel, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE found themselves drawn into a quiet coalition, unified by fear of Iran's reach. The Abraham Accords were not just about peace, they were about geometry, the drawing of a circle around Tehran. The U.S. Fifth Fleet became the doctrine's enforcer, its patrols a floating message of deterrence. Yet in Tehran, the message was read differently. As proof that the West could never be trusted, what followed was an arms race in shadows: drones, missiles, and cyber ghosts. By the time new administrations sought negotiation, the ground beneath diplomacy had hardened. Trust was gone. Strategy had replaced it. And the blueprint for today's naval buildup was already written in those years of economic siege and strategic solitude. From space, the pattern is unmistakable. American assets form a tightening arc around Iran, from the Mediterranean to the Indian Ocean. Each node is both a shield and a spear. In Qatar, Al Udeid Air Base hums with reconnaissance drones and refueling tankers, eyes fixed eastward. In Bahrain, the U.S. Fifth Fleet's command center glows through the night, orchestrating patrols across contested waters. Farther south, Diego Garcia, a speck of coral in the ocean, holds bombers that can reach Tehran in hours. In the Gulf of Oman, destroyers linger just beyond the horizon, their radar arrays sweeping for ballistic signatures. Unmanned aircraft circle above, mapping Iranian coastal batteries and naval outposts near Chabahar and Bandar Abbas. Every signal, every movement, feeds a digital model of readiness. This is deterrence by geometry, positioning power so precisely that even stillness feels like a threat. Yet the closer these forces draw, the thinner the line between surveillance and provocation becomes. In the vast quiet of these waters, conflict no longer begins with a declaration. It begins with a shadow crossing a radar screen, and a decision made in seconds that could echo for decades. In the desert south of Tehran, doors of steel grind open beneath layers of rock inside. Rows of ballistic missiles gleam beneath the pale light, a hidden city of fire and precision. Iran calls it Operation Deterrence. The West calls it a warning. Recent intelligence confirms what Tehran has only hinted at, a surge in missile production. Factories once limited by sanctions now operate around the clock, pushing out new variants of the Sijil and Khorramshahr lines. Each is capable of reaching Tel Aviv, Riyadh, or even U.S. bases in the Gulf. But beyond range, the shift is in accuracy. Iran's engineers are chasing precision. Guidance systems refined by domestic research and battlefield lessons from Syria and Iraq. They're also experimenting with hypersonic prototypes, moving faster than interception allows. State television broadcasts these developments like sermons, footage of underground silos, commanders standing before vast arrays of warheads, and slogans painted on concrete. We are ready for any confrontation. To the outside world, these are acts of defiance. To Iran, they are acts of survival. The language of a nation that believes deterrence is the only diplomacy that works. As U.S. fleets close in and Israeli warnings grow sharper, Tehran isn't blinking, it's calculating, preparing, and quietly reminding the world that a cornered nation still has claws. For Israel, the threat is existential, not political. Every centrifuge that spins in Natanz or Fordow echoes through Tel Aviv like a ticking clock. Over the past decade, Israel's intelligence services have fought a war no one officially acknowledges. Scientists were gunned down in traffic, explosions rippling through nuclear labs, viruses, digital and visible, slithering into centrifuge codes. They call it defense through invisibility. The world calls it Stuxnet 2.0. Beneath the diplomatic facade, coordination between the U.S. and Israel has never been closer. Joint drills simulate deep strikes on hardened bunkers. Intelligence satellites share every pixel of Iranian movement. And when Israeli jets roar over the Negev, American technicians monitor from command centers half a world away. But Israel's unease runs deeper than strategy. It's about survival in a region where every border feels temporary. The question that haunts its defense planners is not if Iran crosses the nuclear threshold, but when and if that moment comes, Israel's response will be cautious. It will be surgical, immediate, and possibly catastrophic. The shadow war may one day step into the light, and when it does, the entire Middle East will feel the flash beneath the missiles. In treaties lies something far older, a war of faith and identity. Zionism and revolutionary Islam are not merely political forces, they are worldviews forged in prophecy and pain. To Israel, survival is sanctified, a divine right after centuries of exile and persecution. To Iran, resistance is sacred, a duty to defend the Ummah from imperial powers and occupation. This is why diplomacy rarely holds. For both, the fight is not just about land or uranium, it's about destiny. Speeches from Tehran invoke the Mahdi's return and the fall of arrogance. In Jerusalem, leaders quote scripture to justify preemptive defense. Each side sees itself as chosen, and each sees the other as an obstacle. And in that collision of conviction, even reason bends. The battle between belief and existence ensures that peace, in this region, is never more than a pause. The Middle East has never moved as a single piece. It shifts like sand in a storm, every grain shaped by power. Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates now tread carefully. On one side, decades of U.S. security dependence. On the other, a new partnership with China promising trade, infrastructure, and quiet neutrality. Their leaders watch the waters near Iran with unease, knowing that any strike could unravel the fragile calm built since the Abraham Accords. Iraq and Syria, meanwhile, remain the region's open wounds. Militias loyal to Tehran move freely across their borders, linking Iran's Revolutionary Guards to Lebanon's Hezbollah. Every skirmish here is a proxy message sent through smoke and shrapnel. And in the background, Russia and China observe patiently. Moscow sells weapons and fuel. Beijing invests in ports and pipelines. Both understand that the longer Washington is trapped in the Gulf, the freer their own hands become elsewhere. The region, once dominated by one superpower, is now a leverage market. And as alliances shift like tides, one truth endures. Every nation here is waiting to see who makes the first mistake. The Strait of Hormuz is only 21 miles wide at its narrowest point, yet it carries a fifth of the world's oil. It is geography's cruelest design, one choke point that holds the pulse of global trade. Here, U.S. destroyers patrol in slow arcs, their radar beams sweeping the water's skin. Across the line, Iranian speedboats weave in formation. Fast, erratic, always watching one wrong maneuver, one flare too bright, and the balance could collapse. History warns us. In 1988, the USS Vinson shot down an Iranian passenger plane, mistaking it for a fighter jet. 290 lives were lost. That was decades ago, but the proximity and the mistrust, they've only deepened. Beyond the strait, flashpoints multiply. In Iraq and Syria, militias backed by Tehran strike at U.S. bases with drones and rockets. Low-cost, high-impact warfare that tests American restraint. In Lebanon, Hezbollah's arsenal sits like a loaded question pointed at Israel's north. And then there are the unseen provocations, the kind history remembers only after the explosion. A drone misidentified, a tanker was sabotaged, a false signal magnified by politics. The U.S. may never declare intent outright. Instead, as with past wars, it might only need an incident, one that justifies what was already in motion. In the language of strategy, this is called plausible cause. In the language of history, it's called inevitability. Thousands of miles from the Gulf, another stage stirs, the Caribbean. U.S. naval activity near Venezuela has raised quiet alarms, echoing reports from military watchers who see a wider chessboard forming. Tehran and Caracas, long isolated by sanctions, have found solidarity and defiance. Iran supplies oil tankers to keep Venezuela's refineries alive. In return, Venezuela offers docking rights, drone components, and a convenient foothold close to America's southern flank. This partnership isn't just economic, it's strategic. Within the Pentagon, the calculus is more cautious, balancing deterrence without triggering escalation. Officials know the public is weary of endless wars. Polls show Americans prefer sanctions to soldiers and negotiations to nukes. The messaging shifts. Posture, don't provoke. Flex, don't fire. The machinery of power hums quietly, preparing for every scenario, while the narrative keeps the nation watching and waiting. To understand Iran's defiance, one must understand its scars, the 1953 CIA-backed coup. The 8-year war with Iraq, fueled by Western arms. Decades of sanctions that choked its economy, but not its will. To Tehran, every move by Washington looks like encirclement, from bases in Bahrain and Qatar to fleets in the Arabian Sea. This sense of siege defines Iran's strategy. Strike first with words, defend last with fire. Assassinations of scientists, cyber attacks on centrifuges, and threats from abroad have fused into a doctrine of survival. Iran believes surrender invites invasion, while defiance ensures respect. This isn't madness, it's memory. A state born from revolution, still haunted by interference, still obsessed with self-reliance. In its eyes, isolation isn't a punishment. It's proof that it's doing something right. The horizon ahead splits into 3 paths, each shadowed by uncertainty. Scenario 1. The strike. A limited Israeli or U.S. strike on Iranian nuclear or missile facilities. Precision bombs, cyber shutdowns, and satellite-guided assaults. Tehran retaliates through proxies. Missiles from Lebanon, drones from Yemen, and cyber attacks on Western energy grids. The conflict expands faster than control allows. Scenario 2. The standoff. No open war, just relentless psychological warfare. Military drills, covert sabotage, and sanctions that suffocate but stop short of combat. Both sides flex for domestic audiences, but neither crosses the threshold. The Middle East stays on edge. Diplomacy reduced to whispers in neutral capitals. Scenario 3. The silent deal behind the scenes. Back channels reopen, perhaps through Oman, Qatar, or Beijing. A temporary understanding to reduce tensions. In exchange for oil stability or prisoner swaps, both sides quietly step back. Experts from both camps, U.S. strategists and Iranian scholars alike, increasingly believe we're entering a shadow war era, fought not with armies but algorithms, sanctions, and proxy militias. A war without declarations, without endings, only pauses. The waters near Iran are now a pressure cooker. One misstep could ignite a regional inferno. The question isn't whether war is possible, but how far leaders are willing to push the brink. For now, the world watches as the U.S. the Navy sails closer, and the countdown quietly begins.